Vladimir Putin is sworn in for a fourth term as Russian president. Celebrated Mexican journalist is fired for inciting violence against Mexican leftist candidate AMLO. All you need to know about NASA's quake-hunting Mars in sight, and Apple shares hit an all-time high after Buffett raises his stake. Hello and welcome to today's edition of Mexico News Network's Breaking News Business. I'm Elliot Bullman. Let's go to the information. Vladimir Putin has been sworn in for a fourth term as Russian president and pledged to harness the country's talents to achieve breakthroughs. He's been in power for 18 years as president and prime minister, and opponents have likened his tenure to the reign of a Tsar or emperor. Some 5,000 guests attended the lavish ceremony in an ornate Kremlin hall on Saturday. German ex-Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder, now in charge of a branch of Russian gas giant Gazprom, was in the front row, alongside Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev and Orthodox Church Patriarch Kirill. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 arrests were made in 19 cities on Saturday after protesters against his rule in Moscow and other Russian cities confronted riot police. First elected president in 2000, Mr. Putin renewed his four-year term in 2004 before stepping aside in 2008 to serve as prime minister under his protege Dmitry Medvedev, because by law he could serve only 2 consecutive terms. Now, when he reaches the end of his fourth term in 2024, he'll have been in power for nearly a quarter of a century. That would still fall short of Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin's 31 years in power, or indeed the reigns of some Russian Tsars such as Alexander II with 26 years and Nicholas I, who reigned for 30 years. In other news, Mexican media powerhouses Televisa and Canal 11 have fired journalist Ricardo Alemán following a controversial tweet he sent on Saturday, which indirectly suggested the murder of the Mexican election frontrunner, the leftist Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Alemán retweeted a message that said John Lennon was killed by a fan, Versace was killed by a fan, Selena was killed by a fan, followed by a ver, a que hora chairos, implying that AMLO might meet the same fate, which was condemned by the media and citizens alike. Chairos is a pejorative term for the followers of AMLO and leftists in general. The columnist's tweet generated immediate criticism and widespread condemnation on social networks, with the hashtag No al periodismo sicario becoming a national and global trending topic. Ricardo Alemán provoked 90,000 mentions, the vast majority condemning the call to violence and political murder. This incident takes particular significance when you take into account that several Mexican politicians have been murdered this year, including a mayoral candidate for Morena, López Obrador's political party. The coordinator of López Obrador's campaign, Tatiana Clouthier, wrote in her Twitter account, "It's inadmissible that someone that calls himself a journalist criticizing aggression and divisionism acts in the same way." In other headlines, Californians witnessed a rare treat on Saturday morning, NASA's first interplanetary rocket launch from the West Coast. People located around about 150 miles north of Los Angeles ventured out before dawn to see NASA's Mars InSight lander blast off from Vandenberg Air Force Base on an Atlas V rocket. The launch took place at 4:05 a.m. local time, and those not nearby Vandenberg watched the event via live-streamed video. InSight lander will spend now about 6 months traveling through space before it touches upon Martian soil. It's scheduled to plop down on Mars on November the 26th this year, which is when InSight's real work will begin. Once safely landed and set up, the lander will weigh roughly 800 pounds, stretch 20 feet long, and be powered by 2 7-foot wide solar arrays, as shown in this rendering. The lander's main objective is to drill about 16 feet down into Martian soil to check the planet's temperature as well as study Mars quakes by putting a seismometer on the soil. InSight lander will put up a pair of antennas to record how much the planet shakes and wobbles. That data could provide some clues about whether the core of Mars is liquid or solid and help researchers find out exactly how big the core is. Moving on. Apple shares have hit an all-time high on news that legendary investor Warren Buffett now has a roughly 5% stake in the tech giant. Shares in Apple, already the world's most valuable company, rose by almost 4% on Friday to more than $183.7 each. Mr. Buffett said his Berkshire Hathaway Group bought about 75 million more shares of the iPhone maker in the first 3 months of this year. Mr. Buffett's company has been buying up shares in Apple since 2016. Berkshire Hathaway claimed a nearly 3.3% stake, or more than 166 million shares at the end of last year. At the time, the holding, one of Berkshire's biggest stock market gambits, was worth more than $28 billion. Now, after the additional share purchases and an 8% rise in price since the start of the year, the firm's stake is worth more than $44 billion. Apple's market value now stands at almost $932 billion. Some analysts have worried the technology giant's best days are behind it, as competition in the smartphone market increases and sales growth slows. But the company has been building up other lines of business, including the services unit that includes the App Store, Apple Music, and Apple Pay. Apple this week reported profits of $13.8 billion in the first 3 months of the year, rising 25% from the same period in 2017. This was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and log on to MexicoNewsNetwork.com for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.